Good morning. It's Jim Dodson, the Florida Bike Guy. So why is the SpaceCoast IntraCoastal Century a ride for you? We're joined this morning by Jim O'Leary, who's the ride director of the SpaceCoast Freewheelers. And we're going to talk about their infamous, not infamous, but a well-organized and famous ride, the IntraCoastal Waterway Century. It's got some interesting features I think you're going to want to know about. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. How are you?
Where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from Cocoa, Florida,
okay,
on the fabulous Space Coast.
I know you've got interesting terrain over there that's unique to Florida for a lot of reasons. It's not only Kennedy Space Center. So how many years have you had has your club put on the IntraCoastal Waterway Century?
This is our 30th annual IntraCoastal Waterway Century ride. So okay, 30 years. And we started in 1988 at organizing this ride, and it's been continuous ever since.
Just tell us a little bit about the ride.
Okay, we start and end in the city of Cocoa. And first, we go north. There's 4 different routes. They range in distance from 14 miles up to a brand new edition, brand new route, 200 kilometers or 125 miles. And they encompass the IntraCoastal Waterway, which is a big feature of this area. We cross over 3 separate bridges, and we go through some beautiful neighborhoods, some easygoing byways and sightseeing, and we pass by the Kennedy Space Center. So if you've got your eyes up and looking around, you will see off in the distance the Rocket Garden, and certainly you can come back and visit the KSC Visitor Center. So there's plenty of things to see and do while you're out here on the Space Coast.
All right, so this 30th edition is being held on Sunday, the 28th of October, right?
Correct.
And it's going to initiate from Cocoa. How many riders are you expecting? What are you planning for?
Well, at this point, not all of our registrations are in, but we're expecting somewhere between 425 and 475 riders. So that's quite a big crew. And we're well equipped to handle that number of riders.
So I know that the double metric century is unusual. I'm not familiar with another ride that we've been involved in that had that configuration. How many people are you expecting to join you on the 200?
We already have more than 20 registrations for that ride, for that course. And I'm thinking we're going to have somewhere around 35 to 40 people. We have a lot of registrations that happen in the last couple of weeks before a ride. But it is a new route. It's partly because in the spring we host the Cross Florida ride, which is about 170 miles. It's an ultra distance event, and we wanted to kind of shake things up in the Century Ride department, our own Century Ride included, and offer something for the ultra endurance athlete. Those people who are looking for something new and a little unique, and where they really have to be motivated to get out there and train for it.
What I really love about your event, and I love your enthusiasm, you have 2 aspects of this event which are unusual. The first is the 200, which you're just talking about, and we're going to talk about your Cross Florida ride here in a minute. But in addition to 200, you have a family-friendly ride in a really unique location that's only 14 miles, or it could be as much as 28 miles if they want to make it. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure thing. We have a most beautiful ride that goes along the IntraCoastal Waterway, both north and south from the city of Cocoa. If you go south, you go about 7 miles. Make the turn at the bottom of the the route and come back another 7 miles, that's 14. Going north, about the same distance. All the way, you're under a canopy of oak trees right along the Intracoastal. You get the wind off the river, and I'll tell you, some days when the wind is blowing nicely and the sun is out shining and reflecting off the water, it is magical. And we've had a lot of people join us for our weekly rides. We make this a weekly event as part of our club, but we already have about 30 registrations, and I'm thinking we're going to have somewhere upwards of 40 riders this year. The interesting thing about this, the unique thing about this, is that in this particular ride, we assign ride leaders to help with those riders that are looking at 14 or 28 miles for the first time, and they're not quite sure that they're going to make it. So our ride leaders are very accomplished at helping them to get down the road safely and confidently.
So, I've lived in Florida all my life, and back in my college days, had friends that were in Cocoa Beach, and this road that Jim's talking about, the River Road, is something special because not only it's got a 20 miles per hour speed limit for automobiles, right?
That's
so it
correct.
doesn't have a bike lane, but it's a very narrow, slow-paced residential road that runs right along the river, and it is special because it is so canopy covered, and it's homes on the side of the road. It's just really, really beautiful.
The one
And
thing
I
that
applaud you.
I'm
No, I
sorry. The one
applaud you
thing
for
that I
this.
would
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to introduce people to the concept of riding and maybe pushing beyond their limits. I mean, if you have grandchildren and you want to take your grandchildren on a ride and you think they might do 7 miles or 14 miles or 28 miles, it is a fantastic event, in my opinion, to try to introduce them to the sport.
Perfect. You said it all.
Yeah. So the other thing about I know that you've done this for 30 years. So you have I'm sure you got the music and the food dialed in as well. Tell everybody what they can expect in that department.
Well, we took a survey after last year's ride, and we took a lot of the suggestions to heart. And so we've implemented a PA system with speakers and powered speakers. And there's going to be music at the start finish throughout the day, as well as we intend on singing the national anthem before the riders roll out. It's going to be an event for the city. And as far as food is concerned, as riders arrive that morning, there's a continental breakfast that's being served, very light, but something to give you that little kick in the pants. And after the ride, we welcome you in, give you the cowbell chime in so that you can be recognized, and introduce you to our post-ride meal. Now, this year we're catering it with Sonny's Barbecue, and we're going to have pulled pork sandwiches, plenty of salads, iced tea, sodas, all of the fixings. So it's going to be quite a shindig, I think.
So, well, all that sounds really terrific. And I think, the riding is a big part of the event, but food also touches everybody, and everybody wants to look forward to something really good. And a well-run catering service at the end of the ride makes a huge difference and a big impact on how people feel about the entire event. I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
So you mentioned the cowbells. I'm a little curious about that. So what are the cowbells and what are they doing?
Well, this is a takeoff from my bicycle racing days when riders were going through tough elements of a race course, and the fans would get out there and ring the cowbells. And so I said, oh, hey, that is the greatest sound. That is emblematic of cycling, in my opinion. So I've got a bunch of cowbells that we're assembling, and they're going to be out at the start finish. We've got lots of our members that will come out and welcome the riders, ring the cowbells, and welcome them in, so that they're not just finishing the ride, they're finishing it with pizzazz.
That's terrific. So I know that the registration today is $60, and I think Katie's going to put on the screen a certificate or a way to get a discount of 10% for registration. I would urge you, if you have any interest in a very unusual, unique place to ride, if you haven't been to the Space Coast, it's a easy place to overlook on your travel itinerary. I would personally encourage you to sort of mix it up with an opportunity to visit Kennedy at the same time over the weekend, make a weekend out of it. But I think this is a great event. So hope you're enjoying the program. I wanted to just remind you that I'm the Florida bike guy, and I represent cyclists, and I'm always there for cyclists from a safety advocacy standpoint to helping people when the unexpected happens in a crash. But I always tell cyclists, you're more likely to be involved in a car accident than a bike crash, fortunately. And I want to stand here for you, your family, and those that you know, not only for a bike crash, but if someone you know has been involved in a car accident or been injured in any way, needs the assistance of a personal injury lawyer, we're only a phone call away, and I'm always going to be in your corner. So, Jim, let's talk a minute about the Cross Florida ride.
Well,
I think you've done this for what, 28 years? Is that what I'm understanding?
We've done this for 28 rides. There was a period a while back where we relinquished support for this ride, and the quality of it went downhill. So we took it back and we said, no, we're not going to let that happen. This is a very, very unique ride, and we want to hang on to this. So, but this is the 28th edition, actually the 29th this next coming year. And we think that it's the Cross Florida. It goes from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. Either in a one-day jaunt, which is 170 miles, or in a two-day jaunt. And we help set up hotels at the halfway point that accommodate riders and just make it a fun two-day adventure.
So you leave from, I think it goes from Cocoa Beach to Weeki Wachee, basically following the mid part of the state.
That's correct.
And I know that you do limit the number of people that can register. I know registration's open currently. How many people can ride in the two-day event if that's what they would like?
In the two-day event, we're limited to 200 riders.
Okay.
In the one-day event, we're limited to 350.
And part of that you and I have talked about is the fact that you have to have accommodations for everybody at the midpoint. And so you limit the number of people so that you know that you've got the right number of hotel rooms available for people to stay overnight.
That's right.
If someone hasn't done this ride, they're interested in the Cross Florida, it sounds intriguing to them. Tell me why they should consider it, particularly if they've never done a ride of that magnitude before. You have a lot of people that do it regularly. I've got friends that ride ultra distance rides commonly. I don't. But I know people who are maybe they're used to riding 35, or they'll ride 40, or they'll 60, or maybe even can do 100, but they've never done 170 over 2 days. Why should they come, and what should they look forward to, and what's the expectation for them?
I've got 2 words: bragging rights. I tell you. What's that?
That's a big thing.
It's a huge thing. And the Crossing Florida is the kind of thing that if you tell your family and friends, you're doing what? You're crossing Florida? Yes, I am. And it's the kind of ride where we do stretch ourselves, because there's 5 sags along the way. Some of them are on the other side of the state. We rely on some other partners to help us do that. And but once you get across the state and you've done it on your own, on a bicycle, you have such a feeling of accomplishment. And we every year we give out a custom patch of that year's Cross Florida, and you can stick that wherever you want to. It's an embroidered patch, so you can stick it wherever you want to. I've stuck mine. I've done it twice now, both the 1 day and the 2 day. And I've stuck my patches on my little ditty bag that I take around with me on most of my rides. And I also have a Cross Florida jersey that I acquired a few years back. And people look at that and they go, 170 miles? Is this for real? So yeah, and it's a lot of fun. It's worth it. And you get those bragging rights.
Well, I think that it's many people need the recognition for themselves that, yes, I was able to do it. And I think a lot of people, a lot of retirees watch our program. A lot of retirees are involved in your club. And a lot of people feel like I need to do it while I'm healthy and can do it and enjoy the adventure.
I think that's an important aspect of this, is that you're retired, you have enough time to train and get ready for this thing. Most of the important aspects of this kind of a ride are miles in your legs and knowing what you can eat and drink to keep yourself fueled to continue going. Those are the two big things. And if you're able to dial all of that in for yourself, you can make it across the state, that's for sure.
Hey, we got a comment from Mel D. Thank you so much. I appreciate your comment and encouragement there. So I had let's see. Yeah, so I think when people think about riding across the state, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, what kind of roads are they, and what's the speed limit? And while I'm asking that, Mike Martin has a question about what's the date for the 2019 Cross Florida. Thanks, Mike.
It's the first weekend in April, always, every year. It varies. Sometimes it's on April 1st, and it's April Fool's Day, but it's always the first weekend in April.
So let me understand: is the 1 day on Saturday, or is the 1 day on Sunday?
The 1 day is on Sunday.
Okay.
The 2 day departs on Saturday.
Okay.
Everyone finishes on Sunday.
All right. So again, we were talking about what kind of roads do you expect to ride on? I mean, I think people don't want to think they're going to ride 170 miles across State Road 50. No.
In fact, I don't think we're on State Road 50 for more than 25 or 30 miles anyway. A lot of it's on secondary roads, and some of it's on open secondary roads. So you're crossing pastures and farmland and things like that. And other places it goes through neighborhoods. And in some cases, I think we go on the old Miami Highway. There's a little section on the old Miami Highway, which hasn't been changed that much in the last 70 years. But that's kind of a, oh yeah, we don't want to take that out because it has some huge historical value.
Sure.
And once you've gotten through it, you go, wow, that was pretty cool. So
well, you're seeing things that most people will never see in Florida because they're never going to travel off the beaten path enough to see it.
Yeah. These are the little used back roads as much as possible. There's a section. Trying to remember the name of the area, but there's a section in the western part of the ride where there's a lot of rolling hills, and we often tell our riders that we help train up for this ride is, look, you know what? As you're going down the hill, put it in your biggest gear, get it going as fast as you can. As you're coming back up the other side, just keep pedaling. Downshifting as you go, keep pedaling, downshifting as you go, back up the other side. And before you know it, you'll be up at the top of the next hill and ready to go down another one. People who have done this, they go, wow, that was fun. That was easy. That was fun. They were thrilled about it.
Well, a lot of us, I don't engage a lot of hills around here. My big hills are crossing the IntraCoastal Waterway bridges a few times each ride. Yeah. So you have to, I found that it's like, for me, like timing and the gearing makes all the difference.
And
Um,
Florida hills aren't huge hills. They're rollers, and you have to take them in a certain way.
right, right. So also, you offer training for this ride through your club for the 2-day rider. Is that correct?
That's correct. For the last couple of years, we have organized about a 2.5 to 3 month training series that helps people to prepare for the Cross Florida. And we had 20 finishers this last year. Most everyone that joined us for the training finished the ride. I think there was one person that wasn't able to finish, but they've continued on as accomplished riders. And in some cases, they came to us cold. They didn't have much experience either riding long distances or even riding in groups and knowing about pace lines and ride etiquette and how to deal with traffic. So we take them from the ground up and help them to accomplish something that's really huge.
So this ride sells out every year. So
yes.
If you want to ride it, you need to register for it before it does sell out. You don't want to be disappointed once you've made the commitment that in your mind that you want to do it. Also, I think one thing that I wondered about, you're riding across Florida. So if you're not riding with a team, if somebody's a solo, or maybe they have a friend that they may want to do it with, how often would you find yourself sort of isolated or by yourself on this course, on the 2-day event?
There are enough riders that are coming through that unless you get off course, you don't stop seeing riders ahead or behind you.
All right.
So the course is well marked, and we keep track of riders that we're not sure of. In fact, we have a helpline, a hotline that people can call into. And a couple of years back, I was manning the hotline, and a man called me and said, "I don't know where I am. I don't know where to go." But we walked him through it. He found his way back on course and finished. And at the end of it, he says, "Where are you? Are you at the end?" "No, I'm not at the end, but you need to go talk to the ride director at the time, whose name is Carlos." I said, "Go talk to Carlos and tell him how happy you are." He says, "I'm going to do that." He was so thrilled.
Well, I know it can make a big difference in people's outlook on their abilities to do something that challenges them beyond a little bit out of their comfort zone. And I think it's really great for all of us to always be pushing the envelope on what we think our comfort zone is. Otherwise, life gets stale.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So if someone wanted to find out information about the IntraCoastal Century or the Cross Florida ride, where would you send them for information?
Well, we've scrolled the Register ICWC on the screen for people. That takes you directly to our race roster entry for the ICWC. If you want to find out about the Cross Florida, go up to SpaceCoastFreeWheelers.com, and there will be a link out to our big events, and Cross Florida is one of them.
All right. So the fallback is always going to go to the club website.
Yes.
All right. Just before we take off, I want you to introduce people to your club. Tell us about the SpaceCoast Freewheelers.
Okay, I'd be glad to. The SpaceCoast Freewheelers has been a club for about 40 years. And we're in Brevard County, primarily in Cocoa and Rockledge, although we have members from all parts of Brevard County, including Titusville and Melbourne and the beach communities.
And Clearwater.
And Clearwater. Yes, we do have some members from Clearwater. That's right. Thank you, Jim. Including Jim. We focus primarily on road cycling, and a really important aspect of our focus is safety and skill development and social activities. And the safety aspect is quite important to us. As everyone knows, cycling is not without some risk, but it's reduced when you have cyclists who know how to ride in a group, know about crossing wheels and the effects of that, know about how to communicate while you're riding in a group, and what's accepted and what's a no-no.
Right.
And then how to ride in traffic and how to help protect the other members within your group from putting them in a bad situation. For instance, one of the things that we always counsel all of our riders is, look, guys, whoever is on the front of the group is de facto the ride leader. So if you're coming up to a stoplight and it starts to change yellow, and you know you've got a group of 20 or 30 riders behind you, you need to call it out. Stopping, get that hand up, let everyone know that you're stopping, and not think, oh, I've got time to go through, I can make it through. Because what happens is each person behind the next person is just following the wheel. Many times they don't have their heads up to see what's going on, and they're not going to necessarily make their own decision about it. So that person up front is de facto ride leader. We instill that in all of our riders, and then we have some real ride leaders that start to step forward and show themselves to be thinking all the time.
Well, I really applaud you for that, because I think it's easy for people to fall into the habit of saying, I'm going to defer to so-and-so, he's the ride leader. And having all of us have the courage and the knowledge base to be the ride leader at any particular time on a ride is really important. I think it just strengthens everyone's ability to ride safely. Also, the club is involved in the FBA Ride Marshal Ride Leader program, and you already have people that have gone through the FBA training for that, and I think will have or do have a certified ride leader for every ride that you do. Is that correct?
Well, not yet. We have the FBA training that's being offered to our riders in our club in December, early December. Okay. And so at that point, we will have certified ride leaders.
Okay. All right. So your club, give me an idea about the demographics, your breakdown of...
I'd say about a third of our riders are retired and spend quite a bit of time on their bikes. The other 2/3 are members who just love to ride. One of the biggest rides that we have each week is our Saturday Club Combo. We get out on Saturday morning at 8:30 in Cocoa Village, and we ride usually the River Road. Sometimes we go out into West Cocoa. There's another course out there that's very comfortable. And we get out and go along at 14, 15 miles an hour and just socialize. At that rate, you can talk, you can introduce new riders who have joined for the first time to riding in a group. We send one of our ride leaders to ride alongside them and talk them through what's going on as they're riding along. And we catch up on the goings on during the week. We fill each other in on big developments. And I especially am tagging all of my captains, my SAG captains, in the last couple of months to say, okay, what's the status? What's the status? Tell me. And so it's a good way for us to get reacquainted and up to date on things. We also have several different levels of riders. C riders who typically go 15 to 17 miles an hour average speed, and B riders who typically go 17 to 19 miles an hour average. And that's an average. So sometimes you go a little faster if you've got a good tailwind, and sometimes you'll go slower if you've got a good headwind going. But that's typically the two categories. And during the week, we have a couple of training sessions now. These are mostly attended by retirees, and because we've got the time. I myself am a retiree, so I help organize these jaunts. And sometimes on those rides, we hit, I'd say, A- speeds. So we really cook along on our average speeds.
Well,
But
you have A rides as well.
not full A rides. No, we don't have A rides. We're not a racing club.
All right.
We're not a competition club. We're more ride safety, riding for the pure enjoyment of it, and a social club. So it's all about having a great time out on the bike.
Well, in addition to riding, I know you are a club that has monthly meetings, and not that many clubs have monthly meetings any longer. You're getting 30 or 40 people to your monthly meetings. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Right.
We hold our monthly meetings. It's published on our calendar. And we hold our monthly meetings at Sonny's Barbecue on Merritt Island. And
Okay.
We encourage all of our members to attend, and even those people who aren't members yet and want to find out more about the club.
Okay. And I know you have social events as well. One thing that you told me that I've really found interesting when we were talking the other day, that you encourage your members to be ambassadors of cycling to the public.
Yes.
You know, acknowledging drivers when they stop and wave and that kind of thing. Why don't you just tell us briefly about that?
Yeah. I was out riding. This is a few years back, just before I became ride director. I'm also the ride director for the club. I was riding along with a competitive cyclist named Debbie Phelps. That name might ring a bell for some of you. And she's a state and national champion in road racing and criterium racing, and time trialing as well. And riding along with Debbie, she's very diminutive. She has a big smile on her face, but when she passed someone that was doing the right thing, she would wave, and you couldn't help but see that the driver would tilt their head and look at this, and then they'd smile and wave back. And it occurred to me, I said, you know what? This is acknowledging to drivers that they're doing the right thing, that they're recognizing cyclists out on the road. You know, it's part of their recreational activity and choice, and they're not out there to harass drivers. So I started to do that a lot more regularly within all of our club rides, and I don't tell people they have to do that, but people are picking up on it and starting to do it themselves. So,
well, I think it's
really
really
do the right thing. It's like, thank you so much. You're doing the right thing. You're not pulling out in front of me. You're not giving me the right hook. You're not crossover hooking me. You're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Well, I think that so many drivers perceive us as being demanding our place on the road, but yet not wanting to obey the rules that we expect them to obey. And I think everything we do as cyclists and as members of the cycling community that overcomes that perception is a big step in the right direction, because we're not going to get the respect of the motoring public until we show some respect to them as well.
Exactly. We're citizens. We're citizens. We're drivers too. We get to and from wherever we're going, but we're citizens of the road, and we need to act like respectful citizens alongside pedestrians and other drivers.
Well, Jim, it's been terrific. Appreciate you talking to us this morning about these two events of yours. I'm going to be looking at the Cross Florida myself this year. I want to wish you the very best for the best century coming up in 2 weeks. And thank you for joining us. If you want more information, go to the SpaceCoastFreewheelers.com. And I want to see you out on the road. Thanks so much, Jim. And goodbye, everybody. That's it from the Florida Bike Guy. Take care.
Bye-bye.